Less than 24 hours from snow returning to Iowa, the question now is how much will fall, how much will stick, and exactly what kind of problems could it cause in parts of the state. Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us for another update on the snow coming this weekend to parts of Iowa. The models have been relatively consistent in the track of the storm and the timing of the storm. There's still a little bit of disagreement as to how much snow we could see, but one thing is agreeable between the models is that we shouldn't see a whole lot of it stick, and even if it does, it's not going to last for very long. So let's take a look at the models that are coming in this morning. And as we take a look at these, we're going to start this early overnight into Saturday, and we'll see this storm system kind of get its act together in central Nebraska. And as we move towards early morning, you can see it kind of make its trek across southern Iowa. And one thing that the North American model is showing that some of the others are not is that the low pressure will strengthen a little bit, get a little bit deeper, and then that should wrap around more cold air and produce more snow in more areas of Iowa. Now let's switch over to the precipitation version of this. And as we roll it back here, you're going to see, again, storm system takes shape and begins to deepen. You see snow falling in northwest Iowa, maybe a little bit of mixed precipitation in areas. But as you see the numbers drop on this low, and as it gets a little stronger, you see the cold air wrapping around the northwest side and bringing more of that snow further down to the Highway 30 corridor, possibly as far south as I-80, but certainly Highway 30 is possible, and some very heavy snowfall for a very brief period of time as it moves through the area. Now, this could, in theory, produce several inches of snow. However, the mixing ratios are going to be quite a bit different than what we're used to. Now, generally, people think that an inch of liquid precipitation equates to 10 inches of snow. Well, that varies based on the atmospheric conditions and the temperatures at different levels. And so that can vary. And when you get colder air, that could be 20 to 1, maybe even 30 to 1. But this is going to be a very relatively warm and moist atmosphere. And so we're going to be seeing ratios below 10 to 1. And if we take a look at what we're looking at here, let's switch to that ratio. And you're going to see as the snow's falling, really only seeing ratios of about 5 to 8 to 1. So that would mean an inch of precipitation would have to fall to get 5 to 8 inches, and we're not going to see an inch of precipitation fall over any one area over this period of time. So what that translates to is, although it may look like in some of the models that we could see a heavy snow event, in fact, we're not going to see really that much at all. Now, if it does, the low does strengthen as it moves across the state, we could see some higher snow totals in central and eastern Iowa. Here are the darker blues you see here. That could get upwards of maybe 2 to 3 inches tops. But again, this is snow that falls because of the ground temperatures and the fact that some of this snow is going to be falling while the air temperature is still above freezing, but conditions will be favorable for snow nonetheless. We may not see a lot of this stick. In fact, as we switch over to snow depth, the depth of the snow on the ground, not a whole lot there. You see a trace to maybe an inch, inch and a quarter. Now, hopefully that rings true because that could diminish a few of the travel hazards that we could see through the day on Saturday. But as the system moves through the state, as the snow is falling, if it does fall over such a large area, we could still see some travel problems. Maybe not necessarily from slick roads, but possibly from poor visibility. Wet, slushy roads, certainly a possibility. And then behind this, as I said, some of this snow is going to be falling as temperatures are still a little bit above freezing. But behind this system, if we rock this back here real quickly, here we are at tomorrow. And here is where the snow is falling across much of Iowa. And you see this darker area. This is where the snow is falling, where temperatures are getting a little bit lower than the rest of the state as that snow is falling and it's cooling the atmosphere. But again, that's still just above freezing. And then after the snow falls, then the cold air is going to plunge into the area. Let's switch over to a different model so we can get a better look at that. So you're going to see the cold air behind it plunge its way into the state behind the snow. Now, that again will be a good reason to see not as much snow fall and stick, but then we could have the problem of slushy and wet roads quickly freezing as we move into the evening and overnight hours, Saturday into Saturday night. So just because the snow has stopped falling doesn't mean that the road hazards may or may not be out there, particularly on untreated roads and side streets as well. Could be a little slick. As we do see rain changing to snow, and while a lot of that will melt, a lot of it may refreeze later in the evening. As we move into Sunday, things are going to stay extremely cold. Parts of the state may or may not get above freezing. And then we take another plunge Sunday night before Monday, where we again go back down into the 30s for highs before we slowly begin to warm back up through the rest of next week. So again, the main hazard right now is going to be snow spreading from west to east across Iowa throughout the day tomorrow. And how much of it falls over a certain period of time, how much of it may or may not stick, the slick conditions it could produce. We will see some wind, but because this is going to be such a heavy, wet style of snow, blowing snow shouldn't be too much of a problem with this. But again, visibility as the snow is falling, and then possible refreezing later in the evening when that cold air plunges in behind the snowfall. So not the biggest concern for weekend plans, but certainly something to watch out for. Obviously, there's a big game in Iowa City tomorrow afternoon. It's going to be unpleasant. If not snow, it's going to be a very cold rain at Kinnick Stadium for the 70,000 plus that decide to go to that game. So a little bit of snow, a lot of cold this weekend, and we'll warm back up next week. We'll continue to monitor things as the storm gets closer and where it eventually winds up. We'll probably bring some live coverage for you tomorrow here on the channel to see how road conditions are doing. We're also awaiting to see if the National Weather Service opts to go with the winter weather advisory. I think this is going to probably stay below the advisory criteria, but they may opt to do it just because of the travel concerns and the fact that sometimes people don't travel in winter conditions very well the first storm of the season. So at the very least, this is a nice storm to start with. Not too serious, and if people just take their time and watch out for their slick spots, we shouldn't have any widespread problems. But it's still something to keep in mind if you're out and about on Saturday. Again, we'll try and bring you another update perhaps tonight, and then hopefully bring you some live coverage if needed tomorrow as the snow begins to fall. Until then, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, and as always, thanks for watching.